Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're not just looking at charts and numbers. We're diving deep into the human story of the 1929 Wall Street crash. This wasn't just a financial event. It's a story about people, about massive hopes and dreams, and what happens when that whole world comes crashing down.
You know, Mark Twain just nails it here, doesn't he? It's the kind of perfect joke you can only really make with hindsight. But back in early 1929, no one was laughing. The idea that speculating in stocks was dangerous, well, that was just crazy talk. The only direction anyone saw the market going was up, up, and up.
So let's set the scene. This was an era of just unbelievable optimism. It really felt like everyone was getting rich, or was about to. And the secret sauce? A powerful and, let's be honest, incredibly dangerous tool for the average person, buying stock on margin. All it meant was you only had to put down a tiny fraction of the price and you could borrow the rest. And hey, as long as the stocks kept climbing, you looked like a financial genius.
And this whole boom created these two parallel universes, living right alongside each other. In one, you've got the absolute titans of finance. Guys like Jack Morgan, Charles Mitchell. These men were basically gods, making deals in their plush offices that could move the entire market. And then, in the other universe, you have the everyday speculator. People like Pat Bologna, a 19-year-old kid shining shoes who was putting every dime he had into that same market, believing it was his one and only ticket to a better life.
Right. And sitting at the very, very top of this whole pyramid, with a kind of power and secrecy that's almost hard for us to wrap our heads around today, was J.P. Morgan and Company, the House of Morgan. They weren't just in the market. In a lot of ways, they were the market. And here's where you really get a look at how the game was actually played. It was an insider's club. J.P. Morgan had this secret preferred list. And if you were on it, and we're talking former presidents, famous aviators, the biggest names in industry, you got offered shares in the hottest new companies at a massive discount, prices that the general public could never, ever get. The whole system was basically designed to make sure the rich got even richer. Simple as that.
Okay, so as we head into the summer of 29, things are just getting wild. The whole thing has reached a fever pitch. The market feels like it's completely disconnected from reality, just floating up on a big cloud of borrowed money, and this absolute unshakable faith that the party would just never end. Just look at this timeline from the final weeks of summer. It was an absolute frenzy. The market kept shattering records. You have this huge announcement for the Empire State Building, this massive monument to the era's ambition. The mood of the country was just electric.
And this tells you everything you need to know. The mania was so intense that a popular astrologer gets on the radio and makes a prediction. And thousands of investors treat it like gospel. Like it's serious financial advice. When she says the Dow Jones can climb to heaven, she was capturing the crazy, irrational optimism that had swept the nation. And there it is, 381.17. That was the number. September 3rd, 1929. The absolute summit of the mountain, the highest point of the entire roaring 20s. And think about this for a second. The market would not see that number again for another 25 years. But you know how it goes. What goes up eventually must come down. That beautiful, shiny balloon was about to burst. The illusion just couldn't last.
What's so wild is that even as things started to get shaky, as the first cracks started to show, the official word from the very top, we're talking President Hoover himself, was everything is fine. He literally said the business of the country was on a sound and prosperous basis. You can imagine the dangerous sense of false security that gave everyone, right?
And then it happened. October 29th. Black Tuesday. The second that opening bell rang, the panic started. It wasn't a slow trickle, it was a flood. An absolute avalanche of selling. The scale of it is just mind-blowing. $14 billion. Now, to put that in perspective, that's almost as much as the United States had spent on the entire First World War, and it just, poof, vanished from the economy in a matter of hours. So the party is officially over. The financial collapse was like a lightning strike. It was immediate and it was devastating. But the human fallout? That was a slow, creeping poison that would unfold for years, shattering lives from the very bottom of society all the way to the top.
And right away, you could see this massive divide. You've got John D. Rockefeller, one of the richest men alive, calmly telling everyone, "My son and I are buying stocks." For him, it's a sale. But then you have the entertainer Eddie Cantor, who quipped that only Rockefeller had any money left. He was joking, but he was speaking for millions of people who had just been completely and totally wiped out. And this is the part we have to remember. This was never just about numbers on a ticker tape. It was a real human tragedy. It was about a young couple in Flint, Michigan, watching their tiny life savings just vanish. It was about a man trying to get his money out of the bank to pay for his dying wife's medical care, only to find the doors locked. And it was about the kind of crushing despair that led respected men, like the banker James Riordan, to take their own lives. A whole generation's worth of trust was just broken.
Yeah, things got so grim that even the jokes turned dark. Comedian Will Rogers really captured the mood with this one. The idea that a hotel clerk would actually ask if you wanted a room for sleeping or for jumping. It's bleak, but it tells you exactly what was on people's minds. And this wasn't just an American problem. Not by a long shot. The shockwaves from Wall Street didn't stop at the ocean's edge. They radiated out across the entire planet, and they would end up totally transforming the course of the 20th century. I mean, just look at this. The crash was a global catastrophe, period. Take Germany. The American loans that were propping up their fragile economy, they just dried up overnight. This created massive unemployment and desperation, which, as we now know, became the fertile ground for Hitler's rise to power. It was the same story everywhere. Britain, Canada, you name it. Economies all over the world were just plunged into darkness. So the big takeaway here is that this wasn't just a financial story. It was a geopolitical one. The crash completely destabilized the world order. It shattered the global economy and created the exact kind of chaos and desperation that, just about a decade later, would lead the world directly into World War II. And that's our explainer. The party of the Roaring Twenties was officially over. But, as this final thought suggests, the age of illusion wasn't quite done yet. Even after all that devastation, so many people still believed that prosperity was just around the corner. They had no idea that the Great Depression was just getting started, and that the most painful lessons of all, well, those were still to come.